I have possibly urgent information about the infused sulfur treatment for many various ailments. I have really struggled with this video, so I think I'm just going to tell you what happened and the reasons why I think it happened, and then try to offer some methods to be able to better cope with it, just in case it ever happens to you. Okay, so what happened to me recently, just a few months ago, is that I developed a lesion on my forehead that I had a very tough time trying to resolve. It's right up there. I don't think you can see it right now. And so that's something that is kind of new for me, because all of the lesions that I've had since I've known more about what I was doing and dealing with them, I've been able to pretty much easily take care of them and get them to heal up quickly, and it wasn't that bad. But this one, I could just not seem to get control of it. I kept trying to use the sulfur soap and do my regular routine, and it would just not go away. I was able to figure out how to handle it better, which I will get to later in the video, but I am actually still dealing with it to a much lesser extent even now. I developed the lesion on my forehead because as the hair grew into my head, it formed a tight swirl at that spot. That is where all of the bad stuff congregated and where it became the worst, the disease. It was one of the oldest spots in my body, since it was directly across from where the hair was growing into my head. I did not know that swirl was there and was not rubbing sulfur into that area of my head. When I was rubbing the sulfur in, I pretty much rubbed it kind of in the back here behind my ears, and maybe like right up here, and maybe kind of on both sides right here, but not on the forehead. So you might, want to think about doing that if you do this treatment. I also probably had other mitigating problems that contributed to the situation, and I will try to address those and other solutions there as well. I think that sometimes when you're doing this treatment, since you don't know exactly where those swirls are, that when you rub the sulfur into the ingrown hair, into the disease, it naturally reacts to the sulfur, and it goes away from any sulfur, and it probably kind of goes right to those spots right there. That's kind of the end of the line right there. So, and I'm thinking if one was able to map out all of these problem areas beforehand, they might have an easier time dealing with those trouble spots. Maybe that is something that will happen in the future, but since I didn't have access to those types of technologies myself, I'll try to give you some things that I found that will help, at least with the head. So when I started getting closer to the bottom of what was on my head, the disease started being driven away from the main part of my scalp into that spot on my forehead, and that's what opened up that lesion, and it was rough. I've handled about 50 or so other lesions, and at least, and did not have a problem getting them to heal, except for one other, which I'll cover in a bit. So maybe this would always happen towards the end of getting it off your head if you have a tight swirl like that. It's just tough approaching the bottom of the ingrown hair on your scalp. So one reason why I think that is true is that some months before I got the lesion on my forehead, I had a bad spot on my nose where I would always have to rub the sulfur soap in there to try to clear it up, probably about a month or so, or more, a little bit more than that. It was just bad there and was not coming from anywhere else. It was just there, under the skin there. So that's why I believe that on my forehead, it's just a bad spot, and you just have to rub the sulfur soap in long enough, and eventually you get to it. Some of the lesions just seem to take that long to resolve, especially if it's a swirl. My nose was not a swirl, however. I had one other one, though, that developed before I really knew how to handle them, that I just could not get rid of. it got large, and I eventually had to have an operation on it that pretty much saved my life. And I'm very appreciative of all the doctors and nurses and others here where I live, being able to save me. They're excellent here in my area. And I'm not totally sure about this, but I think that if I knew in the beginning what I know now, then I might have been able to avoid that lesion and would not have required that operation. This is just speculation, however, because that was a very large area. It was right here on my shoulder, on my left shoulder, that there was so much underneath it. I'm not sure if I could have, avoided that or not, but I think I might have. And so, but remember, I believe that I have been one of the worst cases of this condition. Okay, here's a possible contributing factor that was present just before I got the lesion. And I want to warn you about this possibility. And that is that it was so dry here where I live that it made the hair much too loose, and the parasites were able to traverse there and proliferate more, which probably, contributed to that lesion opening up. I'm sure that it did. I was just treating it with the sulfur, and I was not sweating enough. I wasn't getting that ingrown hair wet enough and moist enough. I was on my bicycle, and I was riding around, and it was just totally drying me and the ingrown hair out. Riding a bike is not like a running sport where you're, sweating all over the place. Because on the bike, you sweat. But if it's super dry outside, as you're rushing through that air, it immediately pretty much evaporates in that very dry airflow. So I started kind of feeling some stuff inside moving around more. You can feel them moving around. They kind of go to certain areas. If you ever have this, you'll know, you can tell. You can kind of feel them. I really think now that it was just me getting towards the bottom of the area on the top of my head. And that is where their home base kind of is, and that they just started to flee that area, thus going down into my body, trying to get away from that sulfur soap. But I want to warn you, just in case the extreme dryness played a larger role, which I don't doubt that it did. The moisture, you need that. So I'm currently starting to hesitate a little bit recommending riding a bicycle as much, unless, this is what I'm doing, is unless you can find a way to compensate for that extra dryness. If you live in a humid area, this might not ever be your problem. If you do have that condition, you might want to find a different exercise where you're not flying through the air with a lot of extra wind drying you out, unless you can figure out how to compensate for that. Lack of enough moisture could also inhibit bacterial growth, which has a large role in controlling how the body reacts to this condition. Bacteria is a double-edged sword, however, in that it not only controls some of the parasites, etc., but it can also, in many cases, do damage to you. It seems there could be a transition stage here where you are getting closer to the bottom of that stack on your scalp, and using all of that bacteria-destroying sulfur soap, that the balance that was present there before, when that hair was thicker, it starts to break down, and you have to try to, find another way. One other possible contributing factor for getting the lesion that I would like to mention would, just in case, would be the possibility of a sulfur chemical burn. I do not think, however, that this is really what was happening, but for the sake of possibilities, I'm throwing this in here. So maybe the forehead is a little more susceptible to that than other areas of the body, especially when you're exercising and sweating, and that mixture is going straight to that swirl. That's the end of the line there. It's going straight to there. So remember that you do not leave the sulfur on wet for any length of time continuously, as that can cause a problem. So something that I have done in the past that seems to work well to mitigate the dryness problem was going into a shed in the middle of summer. Even though it's a very dry heat, I did a great job of making that hair moist through all the sweating that I was doing. So, like sauna or a steam room or something like that would do the same job. Which frequent use of, like maybe once every day or two, could mitigate any dryness issues. Personally, I have bought a humidifier for my room temporarily until I can get, something like that going. I believe that the wet to dry transition is super effective in controlling parasites and keeping you in good shape while doing this treatment. Just wet to dry, back and forth. Very, very effective, seems to me to be. And that parasitic control. So, there are a lot of ideas here, and I believe that they all come into play somewhat. If I was you, if you have the same thing and you're thinking about using this information, I would definitely study these videos and let me be the guinea pig. Take the information that I have and let it help you if possible. So after getting that lesion, after a while, I started having a difficult time, much more than I normally would, getting it to heal up. 4 or 5 weeks later, it was getting bigger, and I was like, man, let me see if I can do something else or something to help out the sulfur soap a little. What I came up with that worked the best at first, and I'm talking about not the humidity issue. This is different things I put on me. What I came up with that worked best at first is I tried a few different things. Was some petroleum jelly with some ivermectin in it, just on my head. Sulfur soap on the rest of my body. And that seemed to help. Anyway, the Vaseline, which I'll call the petroleum jelly from now on, just rubbing the Vaseline into the top of your head swells the hair and tightens it up and also fills in any voids, which makes it much harder for any parasites to traverse through that area to get to that lesion. They like to attack it. Whenever that happens to you, they keep that thing going for whatever reason. Especially if there's any looseness, especially if they can get to it, they go for it. So, also, the Vaseline is one of the things that I found that was the mildest to use on my system, as far as I can tell. A product called Sulfur 8 Hair and Scalp Conditioner is what I eventually moved to, and seemed to work the best after a while. You might try that. That's what I've got right now on my forehead, on the lesion right there, kind of soaking in there. Oral ivermectin also seemed to help at that point. I also tried honey on the thing. Manuka, I guess, honey. That didn't really do too much. It seemed to kind of help out some at first. You get good at knowing everything kind of helps. And it is good to switch up and try different things. Don't linger on any one thing. Just kind of keep on switching. They all kind of help to an extent. That's what it was like in the beginning of this thing. Like the honey, I had a little bit of help. Like the honey, I had a little bit of luck with bacitracin zinc and antibacterial. And I had a little bit of luck with zinc oxide, not much. So I tried a little bit of mupirocin on there, a little bit stronger antibacterial. And I had a little bit of luck with that, but after a while, that started failing. It's like everything kind of worked, and then it started to fail. Because the real cure is the sulfur soap. And I just was trying to help it out a little with a Vaseline and ivermectin mix. Now, as soon as I can possibly move away from any of those things, I definitely will, and did. I didn't have much luck with the aloe vera number 2 cream, which I talked about in one of my earlier videos at first. But then after trying it a few more times, seemed to work the best on the lesion when I put the Vaseline and the ivermectin on the top and the back of my head. The aloe vera cream number 2 seemed to be the hardest on my system, however, and you have to use it more often, so I hesitate to recommend it. It really kind of seems to confuse that disease and it doesn't know where to find that lesion, but I don't believe that it's the right thing to use. It's hard on you. You have to use it too often. It does work while you're using it, but it's tough, man. It really seems to me that the head might be a special area that just needs a little help towards the end. I would not use anything except for sulfur soap on the face below the eyebrows, though. Also, I think that a broad-spectrum antiparasitic like ivermectin for oral use might be a good thing to keep on hand, just in case. Please keep in mind that all of the information I am talking about in this video is only when I was approaching the end of the hair on the top of my head and developed a lesion on my forehead at that time. This time, I have been using just a sulfur soap everywhere, even without worrying about moisture or humidity, and I was in the super dry place. Not all the time, but for many, many years, over 10 years before I developed this lesion. You do not want to use the petroleum-based or any slippery stuff until possibly the end, because everything will end up in your legs and feet. And you don't want that. You want it up top for as long as possible, breaking down there, because you want to break it down evenly throughout your whole body, so it's not too big in any one place. You have plenty of the disease, the ingrown hair in your lower body. Okay, for complete transparency here, I am going to say that the entities that talk to me in my head all the time did not like me doing this. They only recommended me using the sulfur soap, but they didn't really tell me how to use it. I think the general idea was to just kind of keep driving it into my head up there, and then let that swirl kind of fill up and get tight again, and that kind of closes it up and makes the lesion smaller. I need to pause my teleprompter at this point, but as far as I can tell, now, these guys really piss me off. I can never hardly figure out what they're getting at, but I believe that was the general idea. And so it kind of, as you kind of rub the sulfur soap into the forehead there, it kind of gets bigger and smaller, depending on how tight that swirl is, because the sulfur soap kind of breaks it down, it gets looser, and then you kind of drive it into the rest of your head, and that gets, looser, and it kind of feeds in there some. That's a problem, and that tightens it up again. It kind of makes it, makes that hole smaller on that lesion. That's what they wanted me to do. But it seemed to me that it was slightly getting larger and larger, even though I was doing that, even though maybe I wasn't, but maybe I wasn't doing it the way that they really wanted me to do it. So that's why I went out trying to find something else. And what I did find is working for me. Right now, I've migrated pretty much to, at this point in time anyway, migrated to the Sulfur 8 conditioner. And that is sulfur infusion as well. It's just kind of slippery stuff, but I'm closer to the end. I don't know what's better. I'm only one guy. I'm trying to give you the truth of the matter of all this. And since I don't have the answers, I don't know if these entities know really exactly what to do. It's like they have ideas, and I have ideas, and there's too many cooks in the kitchen here. And so that's another reason why I struggled with this video. It's having to deal with these guys too. And, like I said in my earlier videos, I don't know half the time if they're trying to, put me in a hole in the ground. I don't know. I just do the best I can with everything. And so since I want to help you as much as I can, that's why I'm putting these videos up. Because I never got any, but nobody ever told me that I had this problem my whole life. And all I was doing was filling up with hair, filling up. I was just full to the max. So I wish somebody would have told me. I could buy. I'm smart enough. I could have figured this stuff out a long time ago when I was much younger. So that's why I'm telling you, because nobody ever told me. I mean, maybe that's enough of a rant for right now on that. But anyway, I got to get into some more ideas here. And I've kind of finished this video up. I need to get back to my treatments. It's kind of tough doing these videos because it takes me out of what I need to be doing. I'd really rather be doing that because I stay in much better condition when I'm doing the treatments than when I'm trying to do these videos. And this was a tough one for me to do because I kind of wanted to just only have the sulfur soap and that's it. But whatever works is what the solution is. And so that's what I'm trying to find. I don't think we'll really have the total solution. The sulfur soap is definitely your main weapon by far and away. There's nothing else that compares at all to it. And I'd love for it to be only that. And that's what these entities are saying. They don't like this video. It's only the sulfur soap. I want to get into this idea now that I'm thinking about it. There's like 3 different ways to rub sulfur into the lesion. The one when I could demo one of them, I kind of recorded one of them. That's the light way. You just kind of then I talk about that humidifier. I use my humidifier and get the face of the soap wet, and then I just kind of barely rub it on there. And when you do that's what I call the light method. When you do the light method like that, it creates bacteria underneath of there, and any parasites, they move away from that lesion. But like I said, it's a double-edged sword. There's little tiny bacteria, and then they're chewing on you too. So this thing's tough, Okay, I got my soap wet with a humidifier. And I just have this lesion here, and I just kind of take it and just rub it in circular motions, kind of right on it like that, lightly. Just a little bit. And that's it. Right there. That's kind of the technique. And then there's 2 other ways. There's a medium way where you just rub it in kind of, hard but not too hard. And what that does is it doesn't generate any bacteria, but what it does is, and it doesn't kind of spread that thing more open, which when you drive it in deep, it kind of like moves the hair away and the hole gets kind of bigger. But when you drive it in deep, it works the best because that sulfur is what cures the stuff. It's hard to figure out which way to use. So the medium way, it kind of, it cures it pretty good. Not as good as the deep way, but it doesn't kind of open that hole. It doesn't kind of rip your skin up as much there. But I found many times where when I was driving in deeply, that would kind of shrink it up. The hardest, driving it in harder kind of shrinks it because it's the sulfur that's curing it. And it's getting in there deeper. And I also found that sometimes when you rub it on very lightly, everything leaves and you don't have a problem. And you can sleep then, like 8-10 hours, no problem. Nothing goes there, nothing's messing with it. But I've done it also before where you kind of rub it in slightly and there's too much bacteria and that makes it bigger. So you can go with the way I've done it, which is, to kind of soak that area and kind of put the conditioner on the top of your head. I wouldn't do that, when you're in a new case. I've done that, like I said, I've been doing this over 10 years. So I'm getting down towards the later stages of this thing. Or you're going to listen to these entities who who knows what they're even trying to do. Maybe they have the best idea. I don't know. This treatment needs to be, perfected, and I'm only one guy. So, let me get off of that now. So I have to go into this idea now that I don't know how much of a... I'm sure that's going to leave a scar on my forehead there. Which probably, I don't know, maybe can be avoided, maybe it can't be avoided. It seemed to me that when I play basketball, and I play, because I'm older, it takes me some time to recuperate, because I play hard too, that, after about 3 days, like on the third day after, second or third day, I can go back and play again. That maybe that's the best, because I'm sweating, everything's getting moist. I come back home here and it kind of dries out because it's real dry. Turn some fans on, cool down. You kind of dry out. That kind of kills the parasites. And then it takes me 2 or 3 days, and that's the bacteria is building up. That's not the way I've decided to do it. I want to use the sulfur soap as much as I can, because that's what really breaks it down. And so that's why that's why I've been trying to ride a bike, because I can ride a bike like every single day if I had to. And get a good enough workout to where it really detoxifies me. But maybe that's not the best way. I still trying to figure it all out. All I know is that this cure for this thing is sulfur soap, because it does everything. It breaks down the hair. It pretty much controls everything that's in there, except it doesn't do the best job in controlling parasites sometimes. It's tough. It's a very complicated thing. I'm trying to make it as simple as I possibly can. Maybe that's what the entities are doing. They're trying to make it as simple as it possibly can, because it's a complicated thing. And if you just had one way to go, maybe this world could end up to be a much better place than it is right now, because this thing is affecting everything. This problem affects everything. That's what I'm saying. So let me keep going into my thought that I have here. And that is, since that's going to leave a scar, and I'm still working with mine right now. I hope it's not going to get much bigger. You can't really even see it, I don't think, on this video. But, it's about a pea-size hole, kind of. It's not totally finished healing yet. I'm still having some problems there, but it's better now. But since there's definitely going to be a scar on my face, I need to go into this idea. And that is, having something like this problem, if you get a lesion by using the sulfur soap and really attacking that disease head on, it wants to try to get away from that soap. It'll bore right through you. So if you get a lesion, you probably you get some scars. Versus, and you can take your pick here, an early death. Because that's what's going to happen. I never said this was easy. I just said it was going to make you better, and it does. But you might have to take a couple of hits. And so you go ahead and make your own choice. Do you want some scars? Possibly. Or do you want an early death? You want to die young? For me, it's an easy choice. For you, that's what you're going to have to decide. If you get a lesion that you can't get rid of, don't panic. This is what I'm trying to get at. Keep at it. Switch things around, but always fall back to the sulfur soap. I'm talking only the end here, because all the other lesions I had, except that one, I had to get an operation. There's just nothing I could do about it. I don't know if I could have avoided it or not, but until the very end, if you get a lesion, you're pretty much stuck with just using the sulfur soap, driving it in there, and just kind of, try to figure out how, and you have to attack it often. So the idea there is you kind of attack it often and get it to heal up as quickly as you can, because As soon as it heals up, you want to cut way back on the sulfur soap because you're kind of pushed. You have to do a lot of exercise, drink a lot of water, much more than normal at that point. So you want that thing to heal up as quickly as possible so you can get back to your normal routine. That's the idea there. So you have to use it pretty frequently, you know, like once every, I don't know, 15 minutes or so at first. Just to keep that stuff away from there and let your body start healing that, because it'll heal it right through the sulfur soap. It'll heal that lesion up. Unless it's a swirl, that's tough. If you just have them that it's not a super tight swirl, you can pretty much fight that stuff away. You know, fight it and you know, get to it. It doesn't take too long. A few days and you'll know, oh man, yeah, it's starting to heal. I'm doing okay now. So always fall back to this. Always just use the sulfur soap as much as you possibly can. Just don't overdo it if you can help it. And if you do kind of overdo it, you have to do a lot more exercise, drink a lot more water. You have to overcome it somehow. Personally, as soon as I could, with the lesion that I have right now, as soon as I started to kind of get a handle on it, I quit using anything as much as I possibly could. I only did the bare minimums just to kind of maintain, and I finally pulled out of it. I wasn't killing myself anymore with all of those molecules. You just can't keep using so much. You have to kind of take a break after a while, but usually it gives you a break because you're able to kind of heal it up. So there's going to be a scar there, but I don't think there's anything much I could have done about it. Don't know for sure. Maybe if I would have stuck with the basketball, which these entities ran me off of. I was doing beautiful with the basketball, and these things wanted me to go ride a bike. Are they trying to help me or not? Or are they trying to get rid of me? I don't know. I just do the best I can do and keep on trucking. And that's what you're going to have to do too. But they're messing with me right now. They're messing with my teleprompter equipment. They can do that. I'm going to start pointing fingers at these bastards because this is ridiculous. This is not anything other than them messing with it. They do everything. So I didn't want to get into that in this video. I want to just kind of give my information and help you out, but no, I can't do it. They don't let me do it. All right. I don't even know where I am anymore. So let me find my spot. All right. Okay, you just got to keep trying different things, but always fall back to the sulfur soap because I think it's just a matter of time. Unless you have a lesion on your back, like on your shoulder, like I did, that got out of control, then there's nothing you can do. And then so you're probably going to have an operation. It's either that or you bite the dust. Take your pick. This is not a perfect solution, but I don't think that there is one. I have never found one. I did a lot of research looking for one. I had to come up with this on my own, as far as I can tell. There's a story there, a little bit of a story, not much, and nobody's even ever heard of it. Nobody's heard 100th of the information, even less than that. They don't care. I don't understand it. I don't understand this world. I don't know why they have such information that would just make your jaw drag on the ground for a month. If you knew what I knew. Anyway, like I said, this is not a perfect solution, but I don't think that there is one, or there will be for a very long time from now, if ever, except to just not get the thing by proactively using sulfur soap and no other soap when you're young. So in summary, the center of a swirl is the most difficult. There are bad spots that need extra work and extra time rubbing the sulfur soap into them. You might need an operation at some point. It's just tougher at the bottom Getting all the disease has fled to there, and that's where it's trying to make its last stand. So it's just tougher at the bottom. You might need to compensate for too much dryness. The forehead might be susceptible to a sulfur chemical burn more than other areas of the body, especially when you get down towards the end. Like I said, I used this Infused Sulfur for well over 10 years, and that never happened to me before. Looseness of the hair is both good and bad. Good because it can go away faster. You can get more the sulfur in there to break it down quicker. But bad because things can more easily harbor there and possibly proliferate there. So really the idea is to keep that stuff, is what I found, as tight as possible and just drive that sulfur soap in deeply into it and let it kind of permeate with the sweating. And the moisture, that keeps it tight. You want to keep it tight as you can. That's what seems to be work, the best to me. Keep it tight, man. Just takes time. Bacteria is a double-edged sword. Great at parasite control, but it chews on you too. Think macular degeneration and just about any disease you can think of. Sweaty exercises are the best. Aloe Vesta No. 2 cream works well, but you have to use it too often, and it seems harder on your system. You can try it. Vaseline with ivermectin might be an acceptable temporary alternative for the head. So, at the end here. Sulfur 8 hair and scalp conditioner is a possible solution as well at this later stage. Oral ivermectin or another broad-spectrum antiparasitic is good to have on hand. One last thing I may mention, and this is why I said the word possibly in the first sentence of this video, and this is more going along with what the entities have in mind as far as I can tell, is that I do not really know if any of the things that I have related in this video, except for the dryness issue really, did anything that sulfur soap could not do by itself. If you do it right. I don't know. I went the other route. So I'm still doing sulfur infusion. It's just a little more, it's like in a petroleum base. So more slippery now, but I'm at the end. So close. Probably take me another few years to get it out, but I should be pretty much, as cured as anything could possibly cure me at that point. The sulfur soap is the real cure. Not any of this other stuff. I was just trying to kind of help it out a little bit. And I'm just telling you what I did, just in case it might help you if you develop a lesion on your forehead during the very last stages of removing the hair from your head. Okay, that's my video. I hope you find it useful.